Keita hitting the ground running, Mane getting a brace. What a win that was. Hi, my name's Owen, the host of the Anfield Edition podcast, and in today's episode, me, Taylor and Laurie are going to be reflecting on Liverpool's 4-0 win over West Ham, looking at our rivals' results from match day 1, and also looking ahead to our game against Crystal Palace on Monday, so stay tuned. Wow, what a start to the season, guys. Our biggest opening day win since 1932, and Klopp's boys are off to a flyer. What did you think of the game, Taylor?
It was a brilliant start to the season, and for me it was totally unexpected because I was shocked. I thought we'd win, but I didn't think we'd win that convincingly. I thought there'd be a bit of rustiness, which is typical in the opening game of the season, so I was fairly cautious about predicting the result in the last podcast. But we played really well, and it looked like it was kind of the game that was in the middle of the season. We looked really well drilled. All the players they had a good chemistry. The front three were on fire again, and it lays down a real mark to the rest of the league to win that emphatically on the opening weekend, because obviously Sky Sports said during the Man City game that even the City staff were asking how we got on, so they clearly see us as a threat for this season and know what better way to start.
Yeah, I don't think you could have asked a better start really than what we had, and I don't think many of us were expecting a win to be as emphatic as it was. And obviously we beat West Ham twice last season, and it was 4-1 each time, but when you think they've got Pellegrini now, and they spent around 100 million likes of Anderson and Yarmolenko and Fabianski in goal, I thought it would be, like Taylor said, it would be much tighter than it was. But that's definitely an encouraging start, and it hopefully sets a precedent for the rest of the season.
Yeah, completely agree. The 4-0 scoreline I thought was certainly reflective of the performance. Listening back to our predictions, you did say it would be a nervous 2-1 win, Taylor, and it was quite far from what happened in the end, don't you think?
It's completely the opposite. As Laurie said, West Ham had spent a lot of money this summer, and they've got a good manager in Pellegrini, and they have targets of finishing probably best of the rest in 7th place. But although Rabbi said they will disappoint, because when teams sign too many players, it normally doesn't end well, but they only fielded 5 of them in the starting 11, so I thought the likes of Arnautovic and Anderson would pose a real threat to us on the counter-attack, but they never really got their own half, and I think the key point of the game was the midfield battle. Declan Rice and Wilshere and Noble really struggled against Keita, Wijnaldum and Milner, and we were able to pin them in, and they couldn't really get out their own half, so once we got the opening goal, you kind of had that feeling it was going to be a straightforward afternoon.
Yeah, I think the way we started the game ultimately influenced the outcome more than anything. It was a great pressing performance overall from the team. Liverpool set the agenda quite early on and made it really tough for the away side there. So the game seemed to feel over at half-time, which was quite strange considering it was only 2-0. Did you get that same sort of feeling, Laurie?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with us, you can never feel, judging from past experience, that the game's completely over. But I think once we got that second goal, you didn't really think there was any chance West Ham were going to get back into the game. And it was almost as if they'd given up in the second half. There wasn't, I mean, in the first half they didn't really get going, but they were completely dead really in the second half. And I think, as Taylor said, the whole team needs time to gel, but they just gave us way too much space at times, and it made easy for us to play the style the way we wanted, especially Keita got loads of space in the middle. And I don't think for West Ham that's a solid indication of how their season go, as in their pre-season they didn't play a side nowhere near our quality, but in terms for us the signs are definitely encouraging, and at times it felt as we weren't even in first gear in the second half especially, so it's definitely positive, and I think we can steamroll quite a few sides at Anfield like that again throughout the season.
Yeah, definitely. So, was there anyone particularly, Taylor, that you were impressed by during the game?
Yeah, I think Sadio Mane was they didn't get man of the match. He thought he did, as judging by the Sky Sports interview, but yeah, he was certainly the most impressive. Harry Kane can't score in August, but Mane definitely has a knack for that. But in all seriousness, he was very impressive. I think last season, much of the limelight was taken off him because of Salah scoring so many goals, but in my opinion, I think in terms of all-round play, I think Mane is the better player out of the two, and only behind Eden Hazard in the league, really. I mean, he can run with the ball, he can dictate the tempo of the game, he can create, he can do anything, really, on that left wing, and he's so underrated by a fan base, it's incredibly he doesn't get as much recognition. And the products he received yesterday were completely deserved. I thought his link up with Keita looked like they've been playing for absolutely years together, and although his second goal was offside by an absolute mile, I don't know how the linesman didn't spot that. I thought the finish was absolutely lethal, and if he can carry on that form, avoid bans or injuries this season, he can definitely be aiming to hit 25 plus this season.
Yeah, I've seen that getting quite a lot of coverage recently. More so leading up to the start of the season, people really tipping Mane to actually kick on and have probably to exceed almost expectation there by getting around that 25 mark. I think people do often overlook his performances, and I think yesterday was absolutely brilliant off the ball as well. But for me, it was Keita. I think his debut's receiving the most attention, and rightfully so. The way he carried the ball from the middle of the park, drifted in between West Ham's lines, and the intelligent passing was so impressive, especially considering that is his first game for us. As you said on the podcast last time out, Laurie, he could well be our player of the season, and if he carries on with those sort of displays, I think it could happen.
Yeah, I think after yesterday, I thought Keita was absolutely outstanding, and I can understand by my player of the season prediction for him. It was the way he managed to find so much space and drift into the right areas, and there was so much energy he provided, and for us to win the ball back with tackles and even power through West Ham's midfield, and that was crucial for us winning by the margin we did. He already seems like he's establishing a good connection with our front three. I mean, Mane in particular, obviously they played briefly together with Salzburg, but some of the passes he managed to pick out were incredible. I definitely think if he can keep that form up and develop that connection with our front three even further, he's going to be a really important asset this season. But I think one player who's perhaps gone slightly under the radar yesterday was Joe Gomez. I mean, it was obviously a huge test for him to see if he could stake his claim for have a starting role this season, because obviously there's something going on with Lovren. I mean, he said he wasn't injured. We don't know exactly what's going on there or when he'll be back. But if Lovren could keep up, if Gomez could keep up the form he did yesterday, I mean, he is mainly be used as a right back by Klopp during his time, but I think he's definitely better suited at centre back. And with the injury problems we've had there and the reliability of Matip, Klavan, Lovren, etc., I think he can definitely be an option this season, especially if he can form a good, solid partnership with Van Dijk there in the Hearts defence.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Joe Gomez was another performance, like you said, that did go under the radar. He was really impressive. He's not commanding sort of centre-back like like Van Dijk is. And in the absence of Lovren there, he'll be the one you probably expect to sort of just be of going under the radar, because a lot of Lovren's performances were in the same vein of that, where defensively he was just sound, passing the ball sound, and there wasn't really problems. Klopp did say, I think, in his post-match, or it might have been pre-match actually, to West Ham with Lovren, it could be 3 to 4 weeks. So, he might be in there, because that would be the start of the Champions League campaign as well, so we could see Joe Gomez in there as well. It'll be interesting to see if he does have to battle with Matip for that place. It seems like Matip, even with the injuries, he's gone a bit unfancied by Klopp, so it will be interesting. If it was our best team fielded, obviously it's a bit crazy to base off one opinion, but would you rather see Lovren or Gomez in there, Taylor, personally?
I think right now, I don't want to be reactionary, so I think you've got to say Lovren. He's played, there's more games you can evaluate him on, whereas Gomez is probably his first real test in a competitive fixture at centre-back, so I'll see how he goes he'll probably play for the next month or so at the heart of the defence with Van Dijk, and he played well, to be fair to him, but I think obviously at the moment you've got to go with Lovren, because we've seen more from him, what he can do.
Yeah, I agree. That rounds up on our West Ham coverage. Let's turn our attentions to some other standout results from match day 1. United kicked things off on Friday with a 2-1 win over Leicester. Chelsea and Spurs continued to carry the torch with respective wins over Newcastle and Huddersfield, ensuring that there would be no upsets to the start of the season against the Big Six. What I want to hone in on, though, was Man City's 2-0 win over Arsenal. Did you manage to catch the game, Taylor?
I did indeed, yeah. It wasn't the best of games, I don't think. It was, the atmosphere was pretty decent at Emery's first game, and I thought they were a lot more impressive than they were last season. Obviously, last season at the Emirates in the league, they just came back off losing the Carabao Cup to Man City 3-0, and then within 21 minutes of the league fixture, they were 3-0 down again. And it just looked like it was the end of an era, whereas with Emery, it kind of looked like the start of an era. You could see the style he's trying to implement. They were trying to play out from the back, which, if you're going to play out from the back, you need to play someone like Bernd Leno. I don't rate him that much as a goalkeeper, but one thing he can do is play out from the back, whereas he sort of checked and they scored an own goal, trying to pass it from the back. And also you can see that instead of sanding off the opposition, which they might do under Wenger, they were trying to press City high at the pitch, and actually caused them a few problems until City got the opener through Sterling. But in terms of the league, it looks pretty ominous for the opposition, considering Man City they didn't start the likes of Sane, De Bruyne, Kompany, Otamendi. Can't think who else they didn't start. But yeah, they were their squad's so big.
De Bruyne.
Their squad's so big you forget players, and they didn't even really get out of second gear. They didn't really have to either. Their squad depth is just something incredible. It'll be difficult to take the title off of them, but for Arsenal, I think it will take probably a season to adjust to their new style under Emery after being under Wenger for 22 odd years now. And but the chances of getting top four, they aren't gone. But I mean, anyone's going to struggle to beat City this season, and so if they can just knuckle down, now the big test is Chelsea next week. If they can win that, they've got a real shot. But I wasn't really that impressed with any other top six side other than Chelsea. I thought United were pretty mediocre against Leicester. James Maddison on the show, maybe a future Liverpool signing. Spurs did, by the way, at Newcastle. No signings, but they look just as good as they did last year. Harry Kane obviously not scoring once again in August, but it's promising signs for us, and they can take positives from this defeat.
Yeah, I'm gonna just dodge my way around the James Maddison comment just slightly. But what I wanted to touch on actually was like you said, there was no De Bruyne, there was no Jesus, there was no Sane, and you just think that it's an embarrassment of riches at City, and it is. I'm pipping them this season for Champions League. I think they'll get at least to the final and potentially win it. I just think that their squad is absolutely ridiculous, and that'll be something that everyone in the league will be scared of. And obviously you've seen from most people's predictions that they believe it's going to be, it was the first title defence in probably about, was it 5-6 years?
Yeah, since United.
So
yeah,
since United. So yeah, what did you think of the game, Laurie?
Yeah, I think, like you said, yesterday showed that taking the title off City, regardless of our performance yesterday, is going to be a really difficult task. I mean, when you consider, like you said, the likes of Company, David Silva, one in the squad, and De Bruyne and Sané on the bench, they were in complete control. They never felt that Arsenal had any chance in the game, and on a different day they could have had 3 or 4 goals. I think, like you said, in terms of the Champions League, I think obviously the furthest they've reached they reached the semis under Pellegrini, but I think this has got to be the season where Pep takes it one step further. I think they have to really, with the squad depth they've got, they have to try and reach the final this season for them. But I mean, yes. I mean, Sterling looked electric yesterday. I mean, Mara showed some of the glimpse of the talent we know he has. I think it's going to be really hard for us to stop them this season. I mean, in terms of Arsenal, I thought their team selection was bizarre from the start. I don't know why. Czech was one of their biggest problems last season. So I don't know, they're spending 20 million on Leno. Yes, we know he has mistakes in there, but if you spend that much on the keeper, it made little sense that you decided to stick with Czech. I mean, he made a few decent saves here and there, but if Arsenal are trying to play out the back, they can't do that with Czech's distribution, which is, quite frankly, it's just really average. I think even though it was City, which obviously they're the Premier League champions, it still showed it's going to take a long time for Emery to get this Arsenal side where he wants it to be, and there's still players like Xhaka, to a lesser extent like Bellerin, they're not at that level he wants. I think a lot of dead wood needs to be cleaned out, and I think it's going to take quite a few seasons if he gets that time to be at the level Arsenal fans expect him to be. So I wouldn't be worried about them at all this season. I think the most they can expect is, I think, a top 4 finish would be a surprise in my opinion, but we'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah, it's really hard to call the first game of the season, but obviously when they're playing the champions, you can obviously factor that in. Just obviously touch on what you said there with Cech and Xhaka. Now, what I found strange was that he made Cech captain, didn't he, over the summer, and Xhaka's one of their captains as well. They don't have like one that they usually just 100% go for, and it would be Koscielny, but obviously he's out with injury, so that was a really strange one I found, and I think, they'll start Leno, I think, for the next game, just based on that.
I think it's a case of, as well, with Arsenal, it reminds me of Pep's first season City. Like, you could see the style Pep wanted to implement, but he didn't have the players to play, like, from out the back. He didn't have the full backs weren't good enough. They had Sanya, Clichy, the players
Kolarov as well.
Players that are past their sell-by date, really, in terms of being a Pep type of player. But Pep still spent that first season getting the rest of the squad used to the style, so that when he brought the right personnel in, they adjusted straight away. And I think that's the thing with Arsenal. I mean, Leno probably should start. They want to play out from the back, but they haven't got the centre-backs to play out. Mustafi's okay on the ball. Socrates, don't think he's that great as a defender or on the ball. So I think it will take time, and next summer they should have more to spend, because I think this summer they had only like a £50 million budget taken away next spend, so it wasn't, considering how much deadwood's in that squad, it wasn't enough. But in comparison to our kind of banter era, they didn't have near enough as bad a squad as we did. I mean, they've got Aubameyang, Ozil, Mkhitaryan, Lacazette. They've got plenty to build on, just about improving the defence and keep building on the new system.
Yeah, I mean, going forward, if you just compare the two teams, I think the lowest I've seen Liverpool probably was when we had Downing on the wing. We had Downing, David and Gog. Like, if you compare just those two, let alone like Mkhitaryan and Aubameyang, or Downing and Ngog, that's one comparison you can make there. I think the contrast between Arsenal's performance against City in the Carabao Cup final last season and yesterday, it was drastic. It was like two different teams. You look at Emery's style, and the game was an attempt to lay the groundwork for a new, exciting Arsenal side, and one that can compete in these big games. They frequently haven't done that over the past few years. They've been on the end of quite a few batterings, so you can see Emery's trying to, tighten up, and but also make them competitive at the same time. While the performance overall was nothing to shout about, you could see that they were trying to get more energy out of the midfielders in particular, and change to a more pressing style. I think Torreira could be really key for them this season. Obviously, I don't think he started due to fitness, but when he comes in, I think you'll see a complete transformation of that midfield. And like I agree with both of you there. I think it will take a few transfer windows for them to really get up there, compete for the title, but also go back to being reliable top four as well. Speaking of signings, Richarlison for Everton made a bit of a splash with those 2 goals against Wolves. Obviously, we as Liverpool fans would ridicule them for the price tag, but it was about 45 million
45, yeah.
when he signed. But yeah, if he continues to perform like that, and at just 21 years old, he could be quite the player for them, couldn't he?
Laurie, I'll let you go first, Laurie.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think the difference of him under Marco Silva compared to how he was and Javi Gracia. Last season, I think under Silva, obviously he got goals, assists, but then I think in his last 27 for Watford already got 0 goals, I think 1 assist, which obviously is shocking to them think they spend 40 million, but under Silva, he looks a completely different player. I mean, he took his second goal. It was almost like Thierry Henry-esque, that finish. It was, he looks a real player. I think he's only 21 years old, and I think under Silva, I think he can actually be, obviously we'll laugh at the price tag, but I think he can go on to be a really effective signing for us. Obviously, for Everton, on the wings, he's got, with the likes of, they've got lots of pace like Walcott, who obviously isn't as good, but Richarlison, Walcott, Tossa, they've got some good players that I think with under Silva, they'll score a lot of goals, but they'll concede a lot of goals as well. So I think they could be an entertaining side to watch this season, and Richarlison's going to help them do that, I think.
Yeah, I think Richarlison, if we look at him in particular, it's just the directness of his running. That's a note, because when you watch him at the end of last season, he was a passenger, and he rarely took the game by the scruff of the neck. I know it's an old cliche and everything, but with that game in particular with Wolves, he picked the ball up in deep areas and drive at defences, and that was the Richarlison you saw at the first half of last season, and I think he'll do really well for them. I think he's picked by 20% of people's fantasy teams this year. I know I've got him in. I don't know about you guys, but
I've got him in.
Yeah, so I think he should pick up quite a few points for us. Finally, let's just look ahead to our next fixture. It's Crystal Palace under the Monday night floodlights at Selhurst Park. Palace came out as winners against Fulham, playing a counter-attacking style, with Fulham dominating the possession with 66%. Could this be a sign of things to come, with Liverpool being picked off in a similar fashion, Laurie?
I think out of all the games we tend to dread each season, a trip to Selhurst Park, especially on a Monday night, is going to be right up there. We weren't particularly good there last season, and we needed a late goal from Salah to come away with all 3 points. And I managed to catch the highlights of the game against Fulham on Match of the Day, and I thought they did look impressive, and their counter-attacking style clearly worked for them. But you could see Fulham had quite a few chances. They were vulnerable at times on the break, and I think Hennessy had to keep a few decent saves to keep them in the game. Obviously, I'm always going to be wary of Zaha, because I think he's obviously a really skillful player, and he's always going to provide problems against us. But I think everyone needs to pay attention to their right back. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, again, in a lot of people's fantasy teams, a bargain at 4 million. But he managed to get forward excellently on Saturday, and he looks a real rock defensively. He's solid. I think he's definitely one to watch for Palace this season.
Yeah, I was really impressed by him as well. I think, like you said, everyone seems to have got him in their fantasy team now. And it was more so with Palace. It was the transition from defence to attack, because Fulham spent the majority of the game probably in their half. But they were so direct in the passing. And I don't know, it's a real change to see Hodgson sort of go for that, in my opinion. It's it's like an old school sort of Mourinho team where they would get the ball out to wide areas as fast as possible, just not with clearances per se, but just long passing. And you've got Zaha there. You've got like Wan-Bissaka, like I said, who's got on the right, who's got a bit of pace about him as well. Benteke is always going to be hit and miss for me, but as a target man, he's brilliant and he always get goals for you. So, I think Palace will pose a threat to us. Taylor, was there anything you wanted to add, obviously, when it comes to Crystal Palace?
This is the game I dread the most every season. Obviously, Palace away is normally a massive bogey ground for us, but I think it'll be a good test for us. First away game of the season, Monday night. Going to be a tough game, and I think it'll be good for us to test ourselves against one of our bogey teams early on and see if we can grind that win. Like last season, I was very impressed. I thought when we all went 1-0 in that first half, I thought the game was over. I thought we were going to lose or draw at best, but we actually managed to turn it around, and I think that's the type of performance we need to put in on Monday night if we're going to come away with a win. As you said, Zaha's going to be the danger man. Last season in the first half against Trent, he pretty much dominated him for the entire half, and to be fair to him, Trent came up well in the second half and defended, but against West Ham I was slightly concerned about Trent. He didn't look quite on it. I feel Anderson could have got at him a few times if he was a bit more match fit. So it should be a good test. I reckon we'll win, but I think it'll be one of those ones where you grind out a win.
Yeah. See, I'm on the other end of the other opinion here, where I would say if we play like we did against West Ham, I think it could just be a convincing win. I think obviously I used to dread Palace, but I think there is a way to get at them, and I think having watched the Fulham Crystal Palace game, I think Fulham were quite unlucky with the finishing, but if we look at the attacking threat we pose compared to Fulham, I think that it could be a completely different game, and that we could absolutely thrash them. So I don't know, obviously, if I'm just being really optimistic, or, you can tell me otherwise, Taylor.
I don't think it'll be a thrashing. I think that I reckon we'll start quite cagey. I normally have bad feelings about Palace away. I think first half, they've got a really good crowd, so they'll be up for it. I think they'll be on the front foot, especially Zaha and Wan-Bissaka down the flanks. I think if we can ride that early wave and then feel ourselves into the game, I think we've got a good chance, but we've got to look out for, we'll be dominating possession for about 60-70% most of the game. And as you said, Hodgson reminds us of a old Mourinho team who will look to sit back and then counter, so we just got to be wary of the counter-attack, and I think we should be fine.
Yeah, let's have some predictions then. We all predicted wins last week, so that's a point each for us on the leaderboard. Just to remind listeners, it's 1 point for the correct result and 3 points for the correct scoreline. We'll be keeping a tally of this throughout the season, of course. So I'll kick things off with my prediction. I said 3-1 last week, and I think I'll go for it again. I'm expecting us to come out of the traps early like we did against West Ham and gain that early lead. But Palace, I think, will get a goal through Zaha, who's just been electric so far. So what do you think, Laurie?
I don't think it's going to be nearly as easy as you think, Owen. Like, thrashing, I definitely don't think is on the cards. I mean, when you see Palace against Fulham, I think Palace did well, but you've got to consider is that Fulham side, they spent 100 million. It's a completely different side to one of the Championship. They've got Schürrle, they've brought in Alfie Mawson, Joe Bryan, Seri, Lamarchand. There's so many, it's almost a completely new side, so they're going to take time to gel as well. So, and Palace's side was virtually the same as last season, so I think it will be a tough game. But I see Palace taking an early goal similar to last season. Well, I do think we'll manage to come back and we'll win 2-1, but I think it will be one of the more challenging games of the season. Definitely a test. First big away test, yeah.
Yeah, I'm literally the same as Laura. I think Palace will take the lead in the first half. They just have that momentum from the crowd early on and we'll struggle to feel our way into the game. But I think once we get into the dressing room hot, I think Klopp will rally them and I think we will come back and I reckon we'll win 2-1 like last year and go for the same result as I did for West Ham, so hopefully this time I'm going to get it correct.
Cool. So obviously we'll see if we can keep up with that leaderboard this season, because it went a bit AWOL last year and I just forgot to actually write the points down. But I'll make sure I do it this season. Yeah, well that's what we got. Yeah, obviously, I've already said that. Yeah, I meant like last season when we were obviously doing it with the old cast. Like I completely forgot to like write the scores down, so I had to like try and like listen back through the old podcast to find out. But yeah, enough of that. Well, that's all we have time for today. Follow at Anfield Edition for constant updates on everything LFC. You can also be notified when the podcast goes live by following us there as well. So say goodbye, Laurie.
Bye, guys.
Say goodbye, Taylor.
Goodbye.
And it's bye from me as well. I'm gonna re-record that. I'm gonna re-record the last bit. I actually hate you. I saw it and I just kept thinking about Colton.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Shh. Well, that's all we have time for today. Follow at Anfield Edition for constant updates on everything LFC. We've done it again. I read it again. I'm deleting that.
You wanker.
You wanker.
No, I'm alright, I'm talking, mate. No, I'm talking. Piss off. I'm talking. No.
You wanker.
No,
You
bye-bye.
fuck off.
Go
Fuck
away.
off.
What are you talking about?
Fuck off. You wanker.
Alright.
You wanker.
Yeah.